Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking time to be here today. Too bad about the game yesterday, but hey, maybe we'll see the hand of God from Messi today. I don't know. So my name's Harry Willard. I'm the founder of Willard Ops Advisory. I essentially help growing businesses deal with some of that operational mess that might happen when they have good people, but the systems just haven't caught up with the growth that they're experiencing. Quick overview. So I'm here because I need feedback. So I'm in the early stages of my company. I have been doing this for over 10 years professionally. What I've noticed, whether it's a bigger company, Fortune 500, or whether it's a small growing company, it's not that the businesses are struggling because they have people who are lazy. That's not it. It's not because the owner doesn't care. It's because those systems that worked when they were first starting out haven't caught up with the growth yet. Could look like a few different things. Most common one I've seen a lot of times is the owner's doing everything, right? They're doing the finances, they're doing all the firefighting. Anytime someone has a question or a problem, they come straight to the owner. The main goal is how can we make their job as the owner easier so that they can actually lead the business instead of being a firefighter every day. Typically, the best referrals for me would be business owners, could also be general managers, could also be operations leaders in general, that, like I said, they have real growth. They have the history to back it up. But they need practical help actually growing, and standardizing is a big one too. You see a lot of these big companies with warehouses, for example. The reason they can take a warehouse here and they can move it to India, they can move it to South America, they can move it to anywhere is because whatever they're doing in that one warehouse, when they scale and they start getting bigger, they do the exact same things they're doing. Could be different inventory, could be different processes for how they do the inventory, but the general day-to-day is already set up. So a lot of people need operational clarity in order to answer some of these questions. You might be thinking, what is operational clarity? So the way I describe it is, it might be, on paper, supposed to be a certain way. It could be a certain process. Maybe it's how we do procurement. Maybe it's how we do our day-to-day operations. Maybe it's how we do our sales or marketing. What happens on paper isn't always what is actually happening in the business. And especially when they start growing, you might have 4 different locations all doing different things for the same process or the same thing that they're trying to do. Could be a contracting company that's doing roofing jobs. Could be a service provider who is, maybe doing plumbing and they're trying to expand into different states. That is always the main idea though, is where's the work getting stuck and what is the easiest first step in order to improve that business. And I want to point out, it could be something simple too. It doesn't have to be this big consulting engagement. It could be something as simple as job aids. Could be simple as a weekly rhythm. Could be, instead of 20, 30 Excel spreadsheets, maybe 4 numbers that just helps the business owners run the business day to day and be able to make those quick decisions. So here are some of the services. Usually it starts with an operational clarity assessment. Going in, working with that business owner, finding out what's actually happening, learning how the process goes from beginning to end. So that's, could be the sales. How does the sales process work? When does it get handed off? How does it get handed off? How do we measure it for success? Things of that nature. And these are some of the easier ways to think about it. And I really want to emphasize, it's not a big consulting engagement. It's that what's that first step? And then if they like the plan, could be 30, 60, 90 days, could be a DMAIC project. But if they like that, that assessment fee goes toward whatever that looks like. So I know what a lot of people might be thinking. Who's this guy? Why me? So I've actually walked the walk. So I've worked with the big companies. I've worked with small growing companies. I've stood up warehouse automation projects here in Texas. I've worked in multiple states. I've worked at very technical roles building the dashboards. And I've led teams on the front line where I saw the decisions at the top affect those people on the bottom. And I was able to be the middle person to actually convey to different stakeholders, could be executives, could be frontline leaders, what is actually happening, what needs to happen, and what is the simple step forward to make it happen. So the way I see this growing is right now pretty much everything is customized per that client and really delivering well for those first clients. The next step would be, how do I standardize it? So that's one of the things I'm here today. What would be a good first customer segment, because I can address so many different things. Is it dashboards? Is it just assessments of their KPIs, key performance indicators? Is it maybe just doing a project charter, maybe a whole project over 6 or 12 months? And what area would be the best to focus on building those relationships here in the DFW area? So I want to really emphasize, this is not a sales pitch. I'm not asking for funding. I'm here because I need feedback. This is early stages. I'm still looking at what the best way to grow is. Right now, I feel that the best way right now is relationships. So it's very hard to gain trust of a business owner, have them let you in to actually see what's going on in the operations. That's why what I've been doing is focusing on, chamber events. Could be the supply chain management, networking, so CSCMP, ASCM, those kind of things. Could be 1 million cups, could be a few different things, but looking at commercial real estate agents, maybe insurance agents, could be attorneys, CPAs, people who already have the buy-in from those business owners, and working with them and having me be a trusted referral, hopefully, that I would be able to help them. And that is the way I see it going. And that's it. Thank you for your time. All right, now the fun part.
Oh, Bucky. Yes. When you talk about real growth, is there like a revenue number that you're looking at? Is there like an employee number? So that companies that are making 5 million revenue have 50 people, right? Like who are, I guess frame that up for me a little bit more as far as your ideal person who you can serve, and what does that look like as far as like growth, right? As far as when you remove the bottlenecks.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So the easiest way I could think of to answer it is kind of what I was saying in the beginning. People who have good systems, or good people, sorry, and they just need help with the systems. I'm not really looking at, how many employees they have, what's the revenue number, especially because I used to work for those bigger companies that, diapers.com is a very good example. If diapers.com would have had someone to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't integrate QuickBooks into this person who's doing all of your logistics, maybe they would still be here today. That's how I think of it. I'm there for the little guy because I've been on the front lines. I've seen what it does to the employees. Automation is coming. AI is already here. Everything is customized right now. That is the goal right now is, I can make the playbooks. I can do all those different kinds of things. The one goal would be, what's a standard assessment I could use? It would be for all services, right? So not just warehousing and logistics, but maybe those service providers, so contractors, maybe, a local plumber who's trying to get into different markets in San Antonio or Houston. Well, that's the way I see it doing, is being able to standardize everything and having resources that, I can pull from all the time. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sort of piggybacking off of that, what I'm trying to get is, so let's say I, as a business owner, right, what would make me reach out to you? Would it be because I feel like there's a problem? Or is it because you're like, oh, I can give you a solution? Because I don't know what my ROI is, right? What's my return on investment? Why would I pay you if I feel like I can handle this? So that's why I'm trying to get it. And I assume the same concept, because if I'm making a certain amount of money, and I can say, okay, I'm going to pay you to help me do this because in the long run, it's going to make me this. Otherwise, why would I reach out to you?
Definitely. So maybe a common term that you might hear a business owner say is, I'm tired of doing everything, or I don't have enough bandwidth, or maybe I'm not sure what my inventory is. I'm not sure why jobs are getting stuck. I'm not sure why I think I should have X amount of cash and I don't. Cash could be getting tied up in inventory. Jobs might be going over labor hours, and it could be certain things where they just don't have the time to make those trackers. They don't have time to do A, B, and C because they're doing the finances and the 2 hours they get after the workday. And that's why it is a little bit of a gray area. So I have a mentor, so his recommendation was a free assessment, and then you give them the 30, 60, 90. One thing I'm trying to avoid is I don't want them to have that assessment. I pretty much give them exactly what to do. And it's fine if they take it and they run with it. They don't need my help anymore. But if it's for free, then it's kind of just answering free help and free questions. But that would be the business owner I'm looking for, who's willing to let someone in, who's willing to take a second opinion, and who's willing to get the team involved. because you can't do any of this unless you have the team involved. Yes, sir.
So I looked up your company online. You don't. My thing is, what you're looking to do is very personal. And a lot of people don't want to tell people their personal business, especially when they're struggling or they feel like they know they have issues, but they're not going. Most times we don't want to go outsource that because they don't want other people to know that. I think having a social media presence and creating videos about how you can help, so this way these people can hit you or talk to you on the back end and behind the scenes compared to, you trying to do it in front of everybody, because then that lets other people know that, and they might feel embarrassed about that. So that's something I looked at.
Yep, and that's a great point too, Noah. That's one of the reasons why I am here for advice of, what a good way to approach this is. That's one of the, so this actually started because I was working with a fractional CFO. His name's Travis McCullough, stand-up guy, shout out Travis. So we noticed that we had a client who was a refurbisher, and they thought they needed financial help, but as I mentioned before, right, they didn't know really, what was going on sometimes. Flying blind is what I essentially call it. I'm sure other people have heard that. They're not sure where this X amount of dollars is going. They're not sure where it's getting tied up on. Industry standards gimbal walks. So essentially, you're literally just walking the floor, just watching how the work is done. Asking the employees like, hey, what do you think? Do you think you have any good ideas? That's actually sometimes where some of the best ideas come from, is the people who are actually on the floor doing the work. And that's where I come in, is because a lot of times owners don't have time to do that. They're doing everything else. They're running the business. They're doing the hiring. They're doing A, B, and C. And that's what I'm trying to work on is, what is a good way to build that? So I really appreciate that feedback. It's a good idea. Thank you, Noah. Yes, sir.
So first and foremost, I want to say, hey, great presentation. Really communicated some stuff that I think actually falls into that engineering, framework. It reminds me a bit of lean manufacturing techniques, trying to help people become more efficient in their operations. Looking for some leakages in there, which in my mind, typically you're looking at people who are trying to scale. Right, they're at a certain capacity. They're at this growth point, but they're a little all over the place. And because they're in the hustle every day, they don't have time to work on it. So you can come in potentially as, for lack of a better word, an audit. And then the win is the efficiency gain, the production gain, the savings that you might be able to, and I'll come in free, audit your operations. And when you find out what that target is, certainly manufacturing makes sense to me. Distribution, you're here in DFW. There are a lot of folks that are trying to get to that next level, and this is a barrier for them, right? Just trying to, they've got so many things. And sorry, I don't want to be the presenter here. Apologize, everybody. But there were a lot of ideas that reminded me of what you may find if you're familiar with like the TMAC, programs, where the Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center and lean manufacturing, and going to any of the manufacturing, type networking events where you're providing something, to them that will help them grow their business efficiently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a great idea. That's one of the reasons exactly why I'm here, is to really narrow the focus. So should it be this wide spectrum of chamber events and supply chain CSCMP, or should it be more narrowed down to maybe one specific group, one specific type of events, and also narrowing down the service too, right? Should it be all this? The one thing I don't want is, I just need a dashboard, I just need this, something that has to get the team involved. That'll actually, because that's what actually pushes the business forward, is the whole team being involved, getting that buy-in, especially from the owner. It's got to be top down, right? And being able to help push the business forward. Thank you. Yes.
What's your value proposition? What makes you different than the next person that does this? A lot of people, I feel like, piece together processes. So why am I, as a business owner, choosing you next to somebody else?
Yep, and that's a very fair question. So when I say that I've been in it and I've walked the walk, so I've worked at Amazon Chicago, serving the entire Chicagoland area. I've worked at the largest privately owned food and yogurt manufacturer, Schweiber Foods, over in Stephenville. I've helped stood up automation for a 3PL for Mars, especially during their merger with Kellanova, and did that in multiple warehouses. I've worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond in their IT program, working on dashboards, presenting to top-level executives. So I can, I think what makes me a little bit different is I'm not just the ops guy. I'm not just the guy that just comes in and says, oh, let's do Gembas or A, B, and C. I can do a plan, project charter, project, whatever. I can create the dashboard that tracks the key performance indicators or objectives and key results, right? I can create all the training guides, and I can give the business owner a very simple way to just track. So all that's in the background, and being able to communicate to different stakeholders, right? Executives all the way down to frontline leaders. I think that's what makes me different.
I would figure out how can you piece that together, because as much as your experience is great, it doesn't tell me what you're like the value that you're bringing. So when I ask value proposition, I would love to like hear like maybe even a little bit more end game, right? So like for my business, we reduce lost revenue through client communication, right? I don't tell you anything else about anything else. And so like really try to figure out like what is it that I'm going to deliver to you as a business owner. I'm going to help you grow by 3 times by looking at your processes and giving you systems, right? Kind of figure out like what is that? Like what is my end goal and that I'm presenting to them? Because your experience is great, but that's not going to make me buy from you. Does that make sense?
So you're asking what separates me essentially from others and what the value is to business owners. Am I understanding that correctly?
Because your value proposition tells me what makes you different, and if I'm going to go with you, how the outcome's going to affect my business. So working with you it's going to be different like this, and it's going to create this outcome.
Yeah, that's a very fair question. So I would say the biggest thing is so I've worked at a consulting firm before. I've seen, how they usually do it. That's one of the reasons for focusing on a short engagement is to get quick wins. Sure, whether the project's supposed to be 6 months, whether it's supposed to be 12 months, maybe 2 years. What do they really want? That's why I'm focusing on smaller businesses. They want results. They want something that has an effect the next day. And that is what I focus on, and that's what I've been through, because I've been there giving these companies the tools that they need. And the biggest thing, right, is that a lot of them might not know it because they just don't have the time because they're just too busy. And one of the things that separates me is that I know how to get the buy-in from frontline all the way to the executive. And the way I do that is not just the tools, but being able to, kind of shift gears, shift terminology. The person in the executive seat doesn't care about Gembas or doesn't care about all the terminology. They just want to see the numbers, which is why I always focus on the numbers with them. The frontline leader just wants to know, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want change. And I get it, right? No one likes change, right? What's an easy way to start that process, though? And it's usually by getting the buy-in, by saying, hey, this makes your job easier. You're certified to do 4 different jobs, but you haven't done 3 of them in 6 months, right? But I'm still going to hold you to the same standard. I've seen that happen, right? And, personally, to me, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that should be a thing. And if you have no resources to help you, right, that's my big thing is, hey, here's a simple written document, threw it together. It follows all OSHA regulations, anything that the company might need in terms of their certifications. And it's an easy first step in order to help that company grow. Well, thank you.
I'm a 5-year-old trapped in a 42-year-old's body. Explain this to me in one sentence.
And that's part of why I'm here today, is to see, is the message clear or does it need to be changed? So the one that I usually say is, I help growing businesses clean up the operational mess that happens when they have good people, but the systems they do day to day haven't caught up with the growth that they're experiencing.
So a couple other things, as you continue to kind of elucidate and, share your idea. One of the points that you made earlier that I think is important to your target is talking to the folks at the top, because you're not going to be able to implement the system and talk to the sales guy. So in that room where you're targeting folks, you need to be talking to, in my opinion and experience, to the CEO, the owner, the one that will allow for that whole system overhaul or that system audit. And so going into those rooms and talking to those individuals about, the win, the productivity win, the efficiency win, the, savings, right? I think those would be, if I were narrowing it down, I think that's the audience. So, you're looking for people that are on the executive level, the owner level, the people that, kind of run the operations floor level.
And that's a great point too. I appreciate you making that, because the message that should be coming through, if it's not, then that's something I need to work on, and I appreciate it, is that this is not supposed to be a big overhaul. This is not someone coming in saying, I'm going to change everything and I'm going to, everything's going to be different. It's not that at all, right? Let's take a simple refurbisher, right? If you're refurbishing office supplies, the simple implementation could just be walk the floor, right? You don't have space for everything. You got to cram everything together. You don't have anything labeled. You don't know where it's at. That probably worked when you had a very small room and very small number of items, SKUs, right? When you have a whole warehouse that's like 200,000 square feet, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because, hey, do you have the money to implement a big system to track everything? Or does it make sense to just draw lines on the ground and say, this is where everything stays, this is where everything, item B stays, item C, this is where we work on everything. And something as simple as that can help you not lose inventory, have people wasting time looking for tools, have people wasting time looking for, what area I'm supposed to be in, things of that nature.
I think in terms of clarity of the value proposition, I think what Shauna might have been trying to convey in terms of like framing it is translating, because I think we understand the operational systems based like gains. And I know you clearly understand, you have deep expertise in that area. But translating that to dollars and cents, to percentage change and growth. Like I'm going to help grow your business 10 to 20, 30% over the next X amount of years. And this is going to translate into this amount of dollars. I think conveying that would make the value proposition a little clearer when you're going to talking with these folks that you're actually trying to sell to, if that makes sense.
So just to clarify, so does it make it a better value proposition if it is more aligned to like a consulting engagement for a long term? So the way I was thinking of it was a repeat business model. I can deliver results in a short amount of time with the hopes that, hey, you know what, we have this other thing that popped up maybe a month or two later. Why don't we call this person and see if they can help us? Do an assessment, see if there's a good fit. And that was the thinking. Because I know for consulting engagements, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll do 6 months at a time. They'll look for another opportunity for improvement, and then they'll try to see if they can do another extension of 6 months, when that first one wraps up. So is that what you're saying? Would that be another way?
For me, at least, it's not necessarily the time. It's more of like the specific things that you go into these organizations and you do. How does that translate to the bottom line, the amount of revenue that they generate from what you do? So that translation process, I think, is like key to conveying your value proposition clearly. And we understand the operations side and the systems, but translating that into dollars and cents, into percentage gains, into numbers, really, I think that's the clarity that I think Shauna might be looking for. Many of us, maybe.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's a great question, and thank you. And I understand a little bit better. So I'm going to switch gears and be like the executive style, right? So do the operational assessment, look at everything. So that's the numbers, processes, and be able to say, hey, if you have everything organized, for example, right? You're going to cut 10% of your labor hours.
Yes.
If you're going to have this implementation of this inventory management system, 30 to 40% of this, miraculous cash flow is going to be coming up again because you actually know where everything's happening. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Alex Hormozy has a book called $100 Million Offers, where he has a formula that's saying when you're creating an offer, you want to think, how can I increase their desired outcome? How can I increase the likelihood of success? And how do I decrease their effort and decrease their time? So, right, like if they want $100 million by the end of the year, right? I'm going to help your business grow at $100 million in the next 12 months without hiring more employees. And, so it's like you're thinking time, outcome, you're decreasing their effort. So I think that's kind of the value proposition of what they're thinking through. And it's maybe understanding who are you targeting, what are their pain points, what is it that they want, how they trust you, right? Likelihood of success. You have the background to do this, right? I helped Amazon in Chicago go from here to here in 12 months, right? Okay, that gives me authority. If I work with Harry, that's probably going to happen in my business, right? I'm increasing likelihood of success. Hey, we can do this in 90 days. You don't even have to hire new employees, right? We can do it with this. So thinking in those messaging, I'm naturally like, okay, that makes sense to me versus it feels a little vague of, hey, my operations haven't caught up with my systems haven't caught up with my business growth. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? So I'd encourage you to maybe check out that formula that he has just to kind of identify those 4 things. What do you want to increase in their mind? What do you want to decrease, time and effort wise for their business owners?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. That was a great question. That's one of the reasons why I'm here is because surprisingly, not the same effect here, but talking to a lot of the smaller business owners, they're blue collar. So, I made the mistake of showing up in suit and ties and going to all these networking events, and right away I could feel, stiff arm, distance, don't want to talk, and that's exactly the opposite message I'm trying to convey. That's one of the reasons for, jeans. It's one of the reasons for like no tie, and trying to figure out the language because that was another. I went too far to the other edge of saying, hey, we're gonna do Gemba walks, and I'm gonna be able to save you at least 30 grand. We're gonna decrease headcount by like maybe 10% if you want, or have them as like extra employees to do whatever you want. We can get this investment for this inventory management system that should be able to track all your different SKUs, and we're gonna save you like 40% in space in your warehouse. Then a lot of times they just look at me with glossed over eyes, and so that's why. Trying to figure out that middle ground, but that does make a lot more sense.
Maybe the results is they want to spend more time with their kids.
Yeah.
Because their business is running their life, right? Like that would be just kind of the research, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe their marriage is suffering. I don't know. No, go ahead. I'm just saying like those are the things that keep them up at night.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what they're trying to solve is, man, my relationship with my wife is strained because I have so many different things. If I hire Harry, man, I can actually have the weekends with my kids, right? Like that's a different messaging that's compelling. Yeah. Versus I don't even know what the Emma walk is or whatever you said, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
All right.
So.
All right, and I'm not a full-time hire. Yeah.
I will say as far as like a delivery, like as far as format, when you pop your slide up and you say, hey, my name is blah, 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 I do blah, 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 right? In that moment, it goes like 5 seconds. We're trying to figure out what you're saying, what's on the slide. Okay, where's the logo? Have I seen that logo before? Like a lot of things go through our head. So when you're starting, you want to start with problem or a story up front. Yeah. So instead of saying, hi, my name is this, you can start it with, in 2007, Amazon came to a halt with this problem. They did this. This is what was happening. And what we found, later on, blah, 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 I was actually on the team, blah, blah, like that kind of format. So it gives us a time, it gives us a place, who, and then it gives us, oh, you were on that team that solved that problem. Cool, awesome. Now I know a lot about you, right? But now when you present this, I know what that fixes. Because I just heard a story that's one true. It's not, we don't want businesses to not be able to grow because they got too big and the systems didn't catch up. It's like, cool, hypothetical. But where's the proof, right? So like when you start with that, it's like, wow, this was a real situation, a real problem. He was a part of the solution. I want him to be a part of mine. So you start with that problem up front, because I can't sell you a drill if you don't need a hole in the wall. Like, I can sell you the bits in the bag and all that, but you're going to be like, why do I need it until I need to hang something up? So when you start pitching, hanging up pictures, I start thinking, shoot, the drill. Like, I don't have the tool for that. So if you lead with that, you'll be able to just say, and this is who we are. And people go, I get it. Well, I get it 100% because you just went through that old story where I wasn't having to pay attention to the slide. I just listened to what you were saying and I got the cool story that I didn't know about. And chances are I'm going to go and tell a buddy of mine that and be like, you know what? This actually sounds like a problem Amazon had back in 2007. Now I sound real smart, but in my head, I'm going, yeah, I need to call Harry. Because every time I tell that story, I'm going to think about you. Because you're the one who gave me that story. Right? So you like help people look smart. And then you're always remembered through that.
Well, that's a great feedback. I appreciate that. That's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Perfect place for it.
All right, well, thank you. Bang the Harry. And we also want to present you with a tumbler for coming out and sharing your business and allowing us to be part of your journey. So thank you very much for being here as a presenter at 1 Million Cups. And we would also like you to sign our pop-up banner, our pop-up banner of fame, I think I called it last week.